Where nature is untouched, there tends to be a lot of mystery. We've all heard about the Bermuda Triangle and its legendary hunger for boats, airplanes, and swimmers. But what about the wilds of the Great White North? We tell you about the Alaska Triangle tonight.
What you are about to hear is believed to be real. Based on witness accounts, testimonies, and public record. This is terrifying and true.
Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Terrifying and True. I'm your host, Henrik Kuto, and tonight's story was brought to us by a good friend of mine and fan of the show, Amber Hansford. She had a vacation recently in Alaska, and it piqued her interest in some of the strange, unexplained comings and goings in the Great White North. So we're going to get to that here in just a moment, but I want to remind you to please make sure you're subscribed on your favorite podcasting app. That way, you'll get a brand new Terrifying and True on Mondays and a Weekly Spooky on Wednesdays. We really appreciate the support and you sticking around past the Halloween season. But now, let's get to the story after a quick word from our sponsors. Amid Alaska's breathtaking and untouched landscape, a mystery lingers. Tourists, hikers, and even planes vanish into thin air at an alarmingly high rate and far more than any other state. So often that a region of wilderness has been named the Alaska Triangle. While we've all likely heard of the legend of the Bermuda Triangle and all of its mysterious lore, the Alaska Triangle is far more deadly than its tropical cousin. Disappearances without a trace are strangely typical in the region, and they aren't rare. Since 1988, more than 16,000 people have vanished in the Alaska Triangle, which is more than twice the national average. So what's the cause for this? Could it be something natural, or is something much more sinister to blame? The Alaska Triangle connects Anchorage and Juneau in the south to Utqiagvik along the state's north coast. Just like most of Alaska, the Triangle contains some of the most beautiful and eye-catching scenery in North America. However, such beauty comes with a price. The region contains some of the most rugged and unforgiving wilderness in North America. It's encompassed by dense boreal forest and glaciers, alpine lakes, mountain peaks, and hundreds of miles of wilderness. With this in mind, it's not surprising that such a vast amount of people go missing. It makes sense to shrug off disappearances as unprepared tourists getting lost in Alaska and quickly succumbing to the elements. And locating a missing person in the Alaskan wilderness must be like finding a needle in a haystack. However, what is surprising is the number of people that disappear without any evidence. No clothing, no supplies, no footprints, no bodies. Not only do people disappear, but large aircrafts also disappear within the Alaskan Triangle. No debris, and again, no bodies. The name Alaska Triangle was first used after a peculiar and still unsolved incident in 1972. Hale Boggs, Alaska's House Majority Leader, agreed to help Nick Begich, Alaska's representative, on Begich's re-election campaign. On the morning of October 16, 1972, Bogg, Begich, Begich's assistant, and pilot Don Jones boarded a Cessna C-130 aircraft and made their way towards Juneau from Anchorage. The weather forecast en route was marginal with turbulence, low visibility, and icy conditions. Jones was very much an experienced pilot, but he did have a reputation as a risk-taker. He checked in with the air traffic control just 10 minutes after takeoff, and neither he nor the passengers seemed in distress. The four were never heard from again. When the Cessna failed to land in Juneau an hour after its scheduled time, it triggered the country's largest ever search and rescue operation. 40 military aircrafts and 50 civilian planes extensively searched an area of 32,000 square miles. However, the search yielded nothing. No debris, no wreckage, no bodies. Conspiracy theories swirled around this incident and the apparent deaths of Hale Boggs and Nick Begich. The most suggested theory was that J. Edgar Hoover, the then head of the FBI, had a bomb placed on the plane to silence Boggs. At the time, many speculated that Boggs wanted to reopen the Kennedy assassination investigation. Nothing quite like a conspiracy theory tied to a conspiracy theory. This is the most famous aircraft disappearance case in the Alaska Triangle, but it isn't the only one. This same thing happened again when a Cessna 340, carrying a pilot and 4 passengers, vanished in 1990. One potential reason for the staggering amount of missing people and vanishing planes is that the vast and unpredictable Alaskan terrain swallows them whole and obliterates them. Alaska has some of the most intimidating landscapes and geography on the planet. The state's massive glaciers are rife with giant hidden caves and crevices the size of mansions. It makes for the perfect burying ground for fallen aircrafts. This theory is supported after taking into consideration an aircraft disappearance in 1947. The British South African Airways Lancastrian 3 airliner Stardust mysteriously vanished when traveling from Buenos Aires, Argentina to Santiago, Chile. Its fate was unknown for over 50 years, even after extensive and lengthy search efforts. In 1998, 2 climbers found the plane's wreckage while hiking Mount Tupungato. Investigators concluded that Stardust likely crashed into the side of the nearly vertical glacier, causing an avalanche to bury it within minutes. Although this didn't happen in Alaska, it proves how easily and quickly such colossal crafts can vanish. It's certainly possible smaller planes could crash into a mountainside, become buried in snow, or fall into one of many deep crevices. But when a far much larger plane vanishes mid-flight, in perfect weather, the triangle seems considerably more ominous. On the morning of January 26, 1950, a Douglas C-54D Skymaster departed from the Elmendorf Air Force Base in Anchorage, en route to Great Falls, Montana. The plane was carrying 36 passengers and 8 crewmen. Among them were 2 military dependents, the pregnant wife of an Air Force Master Sergeant and her young son, as well as military personnel. The scheduled flight time from Anchorage to Great Falls was estimated to take 8.5 hours, and the pilot was expecting clear skies and perfect weather for the entirety of the journey. As the plane passed over different air traffic controllers, the pilot reported their positions and communicated that they were traveling in exceptional conditions. After 2 hours, the Skymaster flew over the Alaska border and into the Yukon Territory of Canada. When the aircraft passed over the Snag radio range near Beaver Creek, the pilot communicated to the station that they would reach the next reporting point at Ashiok in 20 minutes. The crew at Snag Radio reported that this call sounded routine and nothing seemed out of the ordinary. However, the Ashiok station didn't receive a call from the Skymaster, and there were no other transmissions received. The officials listed the Skymaster as missing when it failed to arrive in Great Falls, Montana. The U.S. Army, U.S. Air Force, and Canadian military all failed to find any sort of evidence about what happened to the Skymaster. However, a Canadian forest ranger later reported seeing a low-flying plane on January 26th traveling 40 miles southwest of Snag. He stated that the airplane suddenly disappeared in midair. A loud explosion erupted, and black smoke filled the sky. Officials found this information credible, but after searching the area, they found no evidence of a fallen plane. Several other sightings of the Skymaster were also reported, but each led to no information about the whereabouts of the missing plane. And to this day, it remains an unsolved mystery. It's theorized by experts that whatever did happen to the plane must have been sudden and catastrophic, and as to what may have caused it, they believe either a structural failure, a navigational error, or a crew incapacitation. All of these aviation disappearances were decades ago, which might prompt one to think the navigational equipment and emergency gear used weren't up to par. But even with advanced equipment, planes in Alaska continue to disappear without a trace. One of the most recent airplane disappearances in Alaska occurred on September 9th, 2013. A professional charter pilot, Alan Foster, who had more than 9,000 hours of flight time, was flying his PA-32 360 plane from Atlanta, Georgia, to Anchorage, Alaska. He was nearly 400 miles from home when he landed in Yakutat, Alaska, to refuel. After he finished and departed again, he called the Juneau Flight Service to request a weather update and told them he would stay in Cordova if the weather wasn't good enough to make it to Anchorage. Just 18 minutes after the call, the radar showed a transponder target confirmed as Allen's aircraft at 1,100 feet. The plane was never seen again. Many theorized otherworldly and supernatural beings are the cause of such mysterious disappearances. One such sighting was in 1986 in Fairbanks, Alaska, when military radar recorded the event. On November 17th, Japan Airlines Flight 1628 made its departure in Paris with a cargo of Beaujolais wine and would eventually land in Tokyo. However, instead of flying east, it was scheduled to fly west and make 2 stops, one in Reykjavik, Iceland, and one in Anchorage, Alaska. The plane was being flown by Captain Kenju Tarachi, and at around 5 p.m., it was 104 miles northeast of Fort Yukon. The air traffic controller asked Tarachi to adjust his heading to fly south of Fort Yukon and Fairbanks. Then Tarachi noticed bright lights shining through the window to the left of them. He initially ignored them, but then realized they were keeping pace with their plane. He contacted the Anchorage Center to ask if there were any other aircraft in the vicinity, to which they said, no. The ground radar didn't show any air traffic other than Flight 1628. At this moment, Tarachi saw the lights moving erratically, and suddenly they flew directly in front of their plane. The lights shined through the windshield, and Tarachi reported he felt the warmth of the UFO's thrusters. When they reported the strange object to the Anchorage Center, they said they saw nothing on ground level, but the plane's radar did detect something, a large, green, round object about 7 miles from them. And when the plane flew over an Air Force base near Fairbanks, the city lights lit the sky and showed a silhouette of an enormous spaceship following them. Tarachi later reported it was the size of 2 aircraft carriers combined. The control center asked Tarachi if they should scramble the military, but Tarachi was afraid the massive unidentified aircraft would consider that confrontational. When a neighboring passenger jet flew into the area, the control center asked the flight crew to get a visual of the situation. But Tarachi said as soon as the passenger jet arrived, the UFO quickly disappeared, and he didn't see it again. A week later, the FAA Division Chief of Accidents and Investigations, John Callahan, received a call from the control supervisor in the Anchorage Control Center. They told Callahan that the Anchorage FAA office was filled with media wanting to report on the Flight 1628 incident. Callahan wasn't aware of the UFO situation and asked the caller to send over all the data and information. Callahan listened to the recordings between the controller, Elmendorf Air Force Base, and Captain Tarachi, and played the tape of the radar sightings, but he noted there were no signs of UFOs. Still, it was clear that those at Elmendorf were tracking the UFO's maneuvers with their more sophisticated radar. The military controllers noted the spaceship was traveling thousands of miles per hour as it swirled around Tarachi's plane. After meeting with the FBI, CIA, and Ronald Reagan's scientific study team, Callahan and his staff presented everything they had. When the meeting was concluded, one of the CIA agents swore the participants to secrecy, saying the meeting never happened. They told Callahan if they released this to the American public, it would cause panic. They then confiscated all the original voice recordings and radar tapes in connection to the incident. But they weren't aware that Callahan had already made copies. This wasn't the only UFO incident in Alaska around that time. Since 1998, there have been more than 560 reported UFO sightings in Alaska. There's no question that more people and planes disappear in Alaska than anywhere else in the United States, and we can all speculate. But according to the Tlingit and Tsimshian native people indigenous to Alaska, they have a far more mysterious theory for the explanation behind this. They tell stories about a mythical, shape-shifting demon named Kushtaka. According to the legend, the creature lures travelers by claiming to be their relatives or appearing as a child in need. Once under their control, Kushtaka takes them to the river and either tears them to shreds or transforms them into another Kushtaka. Be it mythic monsters or UFOs, the Alaska Triangle is mostly wilderness, with 33,000 miles of coastline and 3 million lakes. For whatever reason, or for many reasons, it is one of the most unforgiving places on the planet. I've always been kind of attracted to the tundra, to the really cold areas, to extreme winter. Growing up in Ohio, we would occasionally get those big, hefty winters, but I would also spend half of the year in New Hampshire. And New Hampshire has some seriously hefty winters. And I've always kind of missed those. In fact, last year I took a riding retreat in northern Michigan in the dead of winter, and I'm doing it again next year. I'll be way up at the tippy top of Michigan in the dead of winter, freezing my cojones off. But it's just something I love, but that's kind of the thing. The wilderness, the weather, it's all your friend until it's not. Think about going into the woods. How fun it is. Oh yeah, I'm in the woods. It's beautiful. The birds are chirping and all that. But if you go to the woods at night, it's a whole other experience. That's kind of how I feel about snow and extreme weather in general. Snow is beautiful. It's a beautiful thing to watch it pile up and surround you, but snow is isolating. Snow can shut down highways. Snow can shut down air travel. Snow is beautiful death coming for you. So I can't say I'm surprised that Alaska has so many mysteries, with so many nooks and crannies completely unexplored. I'm not going to say I'm sold on the idea that it's UFOs or anything like that, but we definitely don't know what's going on there. So I would say if you're planning a vacation up there, maybe stay frosty, which I suppose wouldn't be very difficult in the Great White North. But what do you think? Do you think it's something supernatural, extraterrestrial, or just plain The Folly of Man. I think I know where I stand, but I'm not entirely sure yet. Terrifying and True is narrated by Henrik Kuto, executive produced by Rob Fields, and produced by Dan Wilder. The original theme song is composed and performed by Ray Mattis, all other music by Audio Blocks. A humongous thank you to our Patreon podcast boosters, folks who support us on Patreon and pay just a little bit more to hear their names on the show. And they are Kelly Oram, Julia Kirsch, Christopher Sullivan, Brent McCullough, Gino Lyons, Steve King, Karen Weemet, Jack Kerr, Jeff and George Hilton, Craig Cohen, and Kevin Fry. For everything you could ever want to know about what we're doing here at Weekly Spooky and Terrifying and True, just go to weeklyspooky.com and click on Patreon. For as little as $1 a month, you can help us make this show go and go and go. And if you have a story you'd like to share with us, just contact us at weeklyspooky@gmail.com.